All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Membeis. Let's quickly recap the beginning of the fourth Perek, shiur. In the Mishnah, we learn that if someone was forcibly removed from his tchum and then forcibly put back, only in such a scenario do we say it's as if he did not leave, and therefore he gets to still walk within his original Tchum Shabbos, which implies that if a person left his Tchum willingly, or if a person, even if it was taken out against his will, but if he returned on his own, then that person only has the Aladamas. Okay, if a person leaves his Tchum, even taken out by Goyim, there also, if he's not put back, he only is allowed to walk within the Daled Amis that the people or his internal temporarily Ruach Ra let him outside the Tchum. Then we had in the Mishnah the following case. If someone brought him out of the Tchum, but they did not put him out there in a biko or in a desert, they put him in a enclosed area. So here we have a machlokes on one side, the Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah hold that he only has daladamas. But since he is in a enclosed area, we view that enclosed area as his daladamas. He gets to walk in that entire area. On the other hand, we have Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva that say that no, if you took in Shabbos in a enclosed area, true, you only start counting your 2,000 amas outside this enclosed area. But since you took in Shabbos in another place, you had your own tchum. I know that you were taken out against your will. Nevertheless, even though you are placed now in an enclosed area, you only have daladamas. That was the machlokes we had in the Mishnah. And then the Mishnah gave a story. And as we pointed out, that story needs to be clarified because the story sounds to be just an illustration of the above machlokes. And the story is that there were a group of Tanoim that when Shabbos began, they were on a ship, but the ship was still at the port. The ship only left the port after Shabbos came in. It means when Shabbos came in, their tchum was the tchum of the city. Once the ship went beyond the 2,000 amas, beyond the tchum of the year, so the first two Tanoim, Lishitasam, Rabban Gamliel, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, they say, well, you can walk within the entire ship because you were taken out, so to say, against your will. You are placed in the ship. Okay, you can walk within the entire enclosed area. The Mishnah says that Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva were machmir by keeping to their daladamas, in the ship for the whole Shabbos, which really means that me'ikar adin, they felt that you also can walk in the entire ship. And that is something that we will, God willing, learn on Daf Membeis Amud Beis as to why is the case of the ship, unlike the case of their machlokes, why is it that dear Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva will say me'ikar adin, you can walk the entire ship. Okay, now this is got before the intro. So that's step number one. Step number two is that the Papa says the following chiddush. If you take produce, if produce is moved out of its tchum, what does that mean out of its tchum? Peiros, like anything that belongs to Re'uvin, are bound to Reuvin's tchum. So wherever it was that the paytas were is irrelevant. What is relevant is that they belong to a person. Wherever that person was kind of shvisa, all of his produce, all of his belongings are bound to that tchum. So paytas of Reuven, that's bound to the tchum of Reuven. If they were taken beyond that tchum, and they were put back in the tchum. Now, unlike in the case of the Mishnah, where we only allow Lakula Alma, the person, to go back to his or her original tchum if they were taken out and placed back against their will, they are a shoygik. By Peter says Rav Papa, even if the act of taking it out and bringing it back, one of them or both of them were bemazed. Don't forget that Petas is a doimen, it's inanimate. They are unable to move. That's the pshat of a doimen. Really, the pshat of a doimen is that the godly spark is silent within it, which is why it does not appear to have any life, even though everything has life in it. But it can't move. So Rav Papa says, since they don't move on their own, they are anusim. It's like the case of the Mishnah, where Misha hoit shiur against his will, and then he was placed back, then ki'ilu lo yatz. That was the chiddush of Rav Papa, and we began a few lines before the bottom of the Amid by asking on Rav Papa from a brayso that in the Rav Bechemya and Eliezer ben Yaakov clearly say that when do we say by produce that if they were brought back, then they get back their original tchum. If they were brought back shoygig and they were returned to shoygig. But if people understood that since the paytas were removed from their original tchum, now those paytas can only be moving within those daladamas. Bringing it with outside to any direction to those daladamas is in violation of tchum. If someone who knew that did it, that's what we infer from the Braisa, then they don't regain their original tchum. That was the kasha against Rav Papa, and we said that really it is a machlokes tanoim. So as we'll begin learning today, we're going to learn a Braisa that ultimately we will succeed in showing that it is a machlokes tanoim, that the Tanakama of a new Braisa that we will learn today will follow the same din, or Rav Papa will be able to lean on the Tanakama based on this logic which he's giving, that paytas are anusim. It's always, any movement is ki'ilu, against the will of the paytas, and therefore if it was taken out and then replaced, even bemazed, right, ki'ilu lo yatsa. We're going to learn a good eitzah tova. If you don't have a marker that is showing you where the tchum of this city is, how would you know how far you can walk? You can always walk 2,000 amas. How would you know where 2,000 amas is? We're going to have a case where your tchum ends in middle of a city. No one violated anything. No one took you against your will. The tchum Shabbos, you are in one village. The tchum allows you to go out, but the tchum already enters a new city, but it ends up in middle of the city. Now, when do we say that once tchum Shabbos, guys, these are good rules to remember, that you only start counting the tchum beyond the city. It means when we are in LA, I can walk the whole Los Angeles. I mean, I am in a enclosed area. You know when we say that? When number one, you were kind of shvisa within the city. Number two, the first case that we just reviewed in the Mishnah, if Goyim, against your will, took you out of your tchum and they placed you in a city, then according to Rabban Gamliel and Abelazar ben Azariah, well, since you were taken there against your will, you also are allowed to walk within the entire enclosed area. Okay, or obviously, if another city is within your tchum, you're living in a little village, there's another little village nearby, and that entire village is within the tchum. That is where we say, L'kula Alma, that the whole city is like the Aladamas. But what we never spoke out, which will be what we're going to be learning, what we will learn today, what happens if you take in Shabbos in one location, and you walk, you're only going to walk your tchum. Your tchum already brings you in an enclosed area. It brings you in a city, but it ends somewhere inside there. It doesn't include in it that entire city. So we're going to have a machlokes between Rav Nachman and Afuna. What exactly may be done? It's going to be a gavaldik machlokes with one din leading to the other, and a lot more. But this is the Nekuda Daf Mem Beis. So let's start. We left off on Daf Mem Aleph from the base. Can we have in our heads clear the machlokes in the Mishnah? Right, or the din, the basic din in the Mishnah, that if you were taken out against your will and then you were put back against your will, then is where we say that you're back You're back to the way it used to be, a good thing, right? Ki'ilu lo yatsa. Says Rav Papa that we apply that case by produce, no matter if the person who moved the peiros knew that they are violating the tchum of the peiros or not, because the peiros are anusim. That's the leniency of Rav Papa. And 3 lines before the bottom, we quote a brisa that says Shitas Rav Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is that peiros only regain their original tchum if they were replaced. The shoygeg, the mezid, no. Rav Papa doesn't make such a difference. So the Gemara says, the last line, you're right. Rav Nechemia doesn't subscribe to this concept. However, it is a machlokes tanoim, and Rav Papa gets to side with the other Tana. Where is the machlokes tanoim? Oh, it's not clear. We have to squeeze out of this new brayso that indeed this is a machlokes tanoim. The Tanya peiros sheyatzu chutz l'tchum. Peiros were removed from its original tchum, so Chevra Nochamol, the peiros are bound to the tchum of their owner. Now, yes, if they were taken out, the person who took them did not know that, these peiros cannot go beyond a certain point. So there the din is yei achlu. So now we have clear that the consequence of peiros being removed from its tchum is really twofold. Number one, the peiros can be moved now beyond daladamas. Just like when a person leaves his tchum, right? Even if the person leaves his tchum, the shoygig, the first line in the Mishnah, he only has daladamas if it's out there, l'kula alma. But by peiros, there's another detail, and that is that if a sin, if a chilul Shabbos happened to this peiros, even only a drabanan, you may no longer derive benefit from the peiros being there, which means you may not eat it. Well, they go together. Not only can you not move it beyond daladamas, even within the daladamas, you would normally not be allowed to eat it. However, if it was removed b'shoygeg, so that's the first din in the brayso, yei ochlu, they may be eaten because there was no chilul Shabbos done b'mezid. Says the final Rashi in the Amid, when the Tana says you can eat it, b'shoygeg yei ochlu, zak Rashi, where? Mamish there. The makim shehem sham. Im yei sham adam she'irav lo isatzad. The owner, of course, cannot go there because the owner cannot get there. If someone else is allowed to be walking in the current location of the peiros, he can eat it, but he can't move it. In other words, even the shoygeg, the peiros, is bound to those daladamas, just like the first line in the Mishnah. If someone took me out of my tchum against my will, b'shoygeg, fine, but I can only walk 4 amas. Same thing with the peiros. Elamai, you can eat it. Back inside the last line. But b'mezid, if they were taken out to tchum b'mezid, not only are they bound to its current daladamis, but since the act of chilul Shabbos was done to it, lo yei ochlum, they may not even be eaten. Daf membeis on top. Rav Nechemia oimer. Now, it sounded simple, but listen now to what Rav Nechemia says and how we will have to now infer from what Rav Nechemia says that the Tanach Kama disagrees with it. B'mekayman means if the fruits are back to their original place, then yeyachlu, right? Then they may be eaten. Shaloi b'mekayman, but if they are not in their original place, then they may never be eaten. Now let's understand, how did they get back to their original place? Because from understanding the case of Rav Nechemia, we'll understand that the Tanach Kama argues with Rav Nechemia, and it's going to have to make sense. So, my b'mekayman, what is the case of Rav Nechemia? He said b'mekayman, but he didn't clarify b'shoygig or b'mezid. How did it come back to its mekayman? If Rav Nechemia is speaking about that the peiros were brought back to their mekayman b'mezid, right? So, and therefore what? And therefore what? This would be mamish like Rav Papa. That would be great, right? That even though it was returned b'mezid, still Rav Nechemia says you can eat it. Why would he say that? Because the person violated taking the peiros back out of its current daladamas tchum, but the peiros were anusim. So from the peiros' perspective, it was a shoygig. If that would be the case, it would be great for Rav Papa, but it can't be what Rav Nechemia means, because the brayso that we learned on Daf Mem Aleph Amid Beis, the one that's 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid, clearly says otherwise. Rav Nechemia cannot contradict himself. Or Ketani Behedia, we just learned above, Rabbi Nechemia and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say, again, this was the contradiction against Rav Papa. Rav Papa agreed he's not following Rabbi Nechemia, meaning only if it was returned b'shoigig in. Now that it came back b'shoigig, so now you can move the peiros, now you can eat the peiros, but the mezid loy. It must be that when does Rabbi Nechemia say on top of the Amid that that's only if it was placed back b'shoigig. Now, what would the Tanakama hold? What the Tanakama would argue with that? Why would they argue with that if it came back b'shoigig? So to understand the sheet of the Tanakama, we have to add and clarify the case that they're talking about. So the Chasurim if it was taken out b'shoigig, right, then yeyachlu. This is all the sheet of the Tanakama. Like Rashi says, even though the peiros are bound to daladamas, just like a person that was taken out b'shoigig, you only have daladamas, but you can eat it. If the peiros were taken out the mezid, then you can't even eat it. Not only can you not move it more than daladamas, you can't eat it. All this is a Tanakama. When do we say that only if the peiros are still now shalai b'mekayman, aval b'mekayman, but if they came back to their place, this is the Tanakama, this will be the sheet of Rav Papa, then even if it was returned b'mezid, you can eat it. And what's the logic behind it? Even though Chilul Shabbos happened, yeah, the person was Machalul Shabbos, but the peiros is a diamond, like the words of Rav Papa, they are anusim. It's always considered shoigig. And on that, like we had before, Rav Nechemia argues that afilu b'mekayman, if it came back to its place, even if it came back to its place b'shoigig, only then can you eat it, because it came back b'shoigig. But if you return to the mezid, then no. If that is the pshat, if that is the case of the second Braisa, then indeed Rav Papa found himself a Tana, which is a Tanakama, whom to lean on, and therefore he's not refuted from the Braisa we had on Daf Mem Aleph from the base from Rav Nechemia. Says the Gemara, why are you learning that pshat in the Braisa? In other words, and therefore Rav Papa has a leg to lean on. I will explain the Braisa otherwise, and then we're back to the Kasha, because we clearly, the Braisa on Daf Mem Aleph from the base contradicts Rav Papa. Maybe b'mezid b'mekayman, if the produce was brought back to its place b'mezid, the kul amalei pliged the aser, all Tanoim will not subscribe to what Rav Papa is saying, and that will refute Rav Papa. He cannot argue with all of the Tanoim. And what will be the case of the machlokes v'hachem b'shoigeg shaloi b'mekayman pligi? The argument of the Tanakama Rav Nechemia is not in the case where it came back, but it's still shaloi b'mekayman. That the Tanakama clearly says shoigig shari shaloi b'mekayman, right? Again, you can't move it more than daladamas, but you can eat it. And Rav Nechemia holds that afilu shoigig, even if all of the movement happened only b'shoigig, right? Then you still cannot eat it unless it was taken back. Only b'mekayman, but shaloi b'mekayman loy. Maybe that will be shitas Rav Nechemia. But when it came back to its place, if it came back b'mezid, l'kula alma, you can't eat it, that will refute Rav Papa. Says the Gemara, no. We did teach correctly the Braisa that the Tanakama will be basically the origin, the source of Rav Papa. No, you can't say the last explanation, because since it says in that Sefer, in the Sefer of the second Braisa, of the Braisa that we have on Afman base, that Nechemia, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, La'olam asurim ad sheyachzuru l'mekaymam shoigigin, meaning they're saying shoigig in, mezid loy, that is their shita, that is their shita. The Tanakama doesn't subscribe to that. In fact, you wouldn't attribute this only to these two Tanoim. Is the Haraya that the Tanakama holds that if the produce came back, even if the person brought it back b'mezid, you are allowed to eat it. So Shema Mina, that we learned correct pshat in the Braisa, and now it is Taka Machlokes Tanoim. And guys, just recapping, the Nakuda here is very simple concepts. If someone or if something left its tchum, movement-wise, that thing is bound to dalad amas if it's out there in the open. If it left its tchum b'shoigig and it was brought back b'shoigig, l'kula alma, that item ki'ilu lo yatsa, amachaya, no more dalad amas. It's the way it used to be. The only question is, do we differentiate between a person and a doimim and produce? a person, since he went and he came back, so we can say, did you do b'shoigig? Did you go b'mezid? Rav Papa says that is not shayach on produce. As far as a thing is concerned, it's always moving, so to say, against its will. It cannot move on its own. It's always considered a shogig. So no matter how it comes back, once it comes back, ki'il loyotz. Okay, weiter. Says the Gemara in the two dots. Omar Rav Nachman Omar Shmuel. Hoya Mahalach. We're going to learn a few of Nachman Omar Shmuel's. This one no one argues. Hoya Mahalach Yeini Yedei Tchum Shabbos. Practically, if you know, after learning a little bit further in ERUVIN, we'll even figure out how you can live in Los Angeles and you can come to a location and you can chop, and if there's no hut, you're leaving the tchum. You're leaving the tchum. And you know, you can only walk now 2,000 amas. People that live in New York, they go to the Catskills. That's all over the place. There's a tchum Shabbos. When we were in Ocean Parkway over there, what did they call it? In Turkey? Not in Turkey. Turkey was all a Torah. What was Ocean Parkway? Samach is not online over here. And we were there for a summer together. So we wanted to walk to Neville, to the Rubashkins. We needed to place an 8 of Tchumen.
Siberia,
Shkoyach. So and you don't know where the Tchum is. So how do you know? How do you intuit that at Khan I can walk and further not? He says, Pashit, common sense. Mahalech alpayim psiyas beinanis. Take 2,000 counter steps. An average psiya, an average step is 1 amma. And that's the Tchum Shabbos. This is brought down in Shulchan Aruch. Amachai. Okay. Now we begin with the Machloikes. Shabbos bebika. This is such a great case. You taking Shabbos in a bika. Now what's the rule? If I taken Shabbos outside the city, I have 2,000 amas, right? I have my own dalad amas, and then I have 2,000 amas. Now listen to what happened. Should have mentioned this case in the intro. This is Gavaldik. During Shabbos, Goyim built a partition. Guys, you know how big their partition was? It enclosed my tchum, plus it enclosed my I can go 2,000 amas in each direction, but that included in it beyond that as well. Now, what we learned a lot together was that if a mechitza goes up on Shabbos, as far as the laws of carrying are concerned, of hoitzah is concerned, you're allowed to carry. There's a mechitza with all the pratim, if it's a karpe, if it's more than 2 saw, but it's counted as mechitzas as far as carrying, as hoitzah is concerned. Do we view this as mechitzas for Tchum Shabbos? If when I took in Shabbos, I'm within an enclosed area, then I only start counting my 2,000 amas beyond it. When I took in Shabbos, there was no mechitza yet. Now I have 20,000 amas in these new mechitzas. Do I get to change my Tchum Shabbos? I took in Shabbos here. Now I am in an enclosed area. Now it's enclosed. Maybe I should start counting my 2,000 amas beyond its mechitzas. Says Rav Nachman, Omar Shmuel, absolutely not. It doesn't change your Tchum. Mahalech alpayim am. You only get to walk from where you took in Shabbos 2,000 amas. Now, Chevra, what happens if I'm holding an object? I can only walk 2,000 amas. Now, I know I can't walk that object another step because I myself cannot go beyond 2,000 amas. Can I throw it? Gavaldik. What will be the issue of throwing it? I'll tell you what the issue will be. That I might be carrying. Now, hold on a second. If this object belongs to me, right, we reviewed this today, my things are bound to my tchum. I'm not talking about an object that belongs to me. I'm holding an object that belongs to you. Your tchum goes more to the north. So can I throw it more towards the north? I'm not breaking that thing's tchum. I'm not going beyond my tchum. I'm not carrying. Why am I not carrying? Because as far as carrying is concerned, it's within the mechitzas that they're going to put up. And that's the pshat that umetaltel bekula al yidei zrika, which is beautiful. It's a leniency, but it fits. Not everything goes on the same track. Tchum Shabbos is not benefited, is not helped, it's not expanded because now there's mechitzas during Shabbos. But as far as the issur of hoitzah is concerned, yes, everything can be carried. Again, you have to have these nuances. My object I can't throw because my objects are bound to my tchum. But if you have a different area of your tchum, I can throw it inside your tchum coming from your tchum, going still to your tchum, even though I'm not allowed to walk there. So what? Walking is one din, carrying is another din. Now, if Huna disagrees, and he says, yes, I get to walk 2,000 amas. Like before they put it, the mechitzas don't broaden my tchum. And now he makes it worse. He says, dalid amas, oy gewalt. Not only can I not throw it beyond my 2,000 amas, I can't carry more than 4 amas. Oy gewalt. I can't carry, it means I benefited nothing from the mechitzas of the goyim. Just like before the goyim put up the mechitzas, you couldn't carry. Listen, I can walk 2,000 amas, but if I'm out there in a bika, right, midrabanan, it's a karmelis, I can't carry more. Nothing changed. You can't even carry anything. So the Gemara doesn't understand what's the logic behind the Ravuna. By the way, everyone agrees that if goyim put up mechitzas on Shabbos, forget about tchumen. They are valid mechitzas as far as the dini of Rishus HaYachid is concerned, that within that area, you're no longer bound to daled amas. So it's a 2-step answer. Step number 1, theoretically you're right. Theoretically you're right. I should now be able to carry within my original tchum. Narvas then, and not only that, I should now be able to throw it as long as it is within these new mechitzas. But if I'm allowed to throw it there, you know what might happen? I might end up going there myself. Shema yimashech achar cheftzoi becheftzoi. I might go after it. So I'm really mitzad the dinei of hoitzah is concerned again, bo'efen of zrika, no problem. But if I'll be allowed to throw it, I might go there. If I'm going to go there, I'm going to break my tchum. So now the kasha is, that's the step number 2. I get it, that if I'm going to throw it beyond my 2,000 amas, I might end up going there. But why will I not be allowed to carry it at least in the location that I can walk? If I can walk there, why can't I throw it there? Answers the Gemara, gewaldig. Now that we are, because of the Gzeid of Rav Huna, that Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel doesn't care about, if I cannot throw it beyond 2,000 amas, but it's all enclosed in this large area that the Goyim put a mechitza around. What did we learn? That if it's nifratza, if one side, if I'm in a location and it's completely breached to another location, if I cannot carry there, I can't even carry here. Wow. So we have 2 shitas now. Now it appears like we're going to quote a 3rd shita, but it's not going to work. It appears like Chia Barav says number 3. Everyone agrees to the first step, that mechitzas that Goyim put up during Shabbos does not expand my tchum. I have 2,000 amas. I still have my 2,000 amas, but not more than that. But number 1, everyone agrees to that. And he says, it sounds like a pshara. No, I can't throw it beyond 2,000 amas, but not like Rav Huna that I'm stuck in my daled amas. I'm not stuck in my daled amas. Says the Gemara, well, I know that he's not saying not like Rav Nachman, not like Rav Huna, but the Gemara is asking that, like Rashi explains, because it doesn't make sense. Does it? Rav Huna make sense? Because if you don't subscribe to Rav Huna's first fear, Shema Yimashech Achar Cheftzoi, then he should be allowed to throw it in the whole thing. The moment you don't allow him to throw it in the whole thing, because you do say Shema Yimashech, no one argues with the concept of nifritza b'malaya l'makayim ha'asarlei. We learned this many times earlier in the Masechta. So mimanav shach, like Rashi writes 2 lines before the bottom of the Amid, I gaza shema yimashach, then he has to agree with Rav Huna. Then afilu apply nitzru mishum mechisa nifritza l'makayim ha'asarlei. And if he doesn't have that gezeda, if he's not afraid shema yimashach, then how can he argue with Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel? Because everyone agrees again that mechitzas that Goyim put up on Shabbos we don't discount them as far as the laws of Haitzah are concerned. So because of that, we amend what Rav Chia Barav says. Ema, 3 lines before the bottom. V'chein Amar Rav Chia Barav. Gavaldik. In other words, he holds like Rav Nachman. You could throw it within the entire area of the mechitzas. Okay, so now we really have a machlokas. So Amar Rav Nachman Rav Huna. I want you to know that don't forget Rav Nachman is quoting Shmuel. Loisif like alei de Shmuel. No. The Chain Rabbi Chia says like Rav Huna. Rabbi Chia is the third sheet. He's agreeing with Rav Huna l'chumra fakert that he subscribes to the Gzeira, and once you can't carry it or throw it beyond 2,000 amas, nifritz of the Malaya, you're bound to daled amas. But we have a machlekes, Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, and Rav Huna. So it says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman Rav Huna, Shmuel. Don't argue with Shmuel. Don't be machmir. Allow Shmuel's leniency as far as Hoitzah is concerned. Again, Bo'ifin Shel Zrika, you can't walk it, but you can throw it because the Tanya Kavase, and this Tanya Kavase obviously will be a kasha on Afuna. The Tanya Charadaf Mem Beis Amid Beis. I know it's one word together, I mean, just separate them. And this is the case that we mentioned in the intro. I taken Shabbos out there. I have 2,000 amas. My 2,000 amas already bring me in a adjacent city. If I would have taken in Shabbos in that city, I would be allowed to walk in that whole city. I would only start counting my tchum outside the city. But like we mentioned in our introduction, that when do we say that a city is considered like daled amas, either when you took in Shabbos in that city, or number two, according to the first two Tanaim in our Mishnah, let's just quote Rabban Gamliel, the first Tana mentioned, that if Goyim against my will put me in that city, then I can, the whole city is like my daled amas. If there is an adjacent city that the entire city is within my tchum, that's also, I can walk in the whole city, but this is a new case. I only have 2,000 amas. The 2,000 amas allow me to enter some part of the city. Do we say, since I'm in the city, now I get to walk the whole city? It's considered daled amas or not? So says the Braisa, Mutter letaltel b'chol ha'ir kula. I am now, yes, allowed to carry within the whole city. I'm allowed to carry. Carry means, like we mentioned, I can throw objects because I am in an enclosed area, but I am not allowed to walk the whole city. I don't get the whole city. I can only walk within my original tchum. But since I am already in the city, if there's an object there and I want to throw it from location A to location B, even though location B is beyond my tchum, I'm allowed to do so. Now, clearly, right, if there is a fear of Shema Yimashach Acher Chefzav, which was the first step of the fear of Rav Huna, then the Tana would not allow you to do that. Now, B'mai Metaltel, practically, how can you carry something to a location that you can't walk to? You know, you can't carry it when you're walking it. It means, like we learned above, is l'chayda la'av, by throwing it. And you see that, yes, I'm allowed to throw an object even to a place where I myself am not allowed to walk. Shema Yimashach Acher Chefzav, we don't have that fear. Kasha against Rav Huna. Answers in front of Rav Huna, loy. You didn't. The pshat in the Mishnah is not through throwing it. Yes, Ali de Meshicha. Meshicha means, when does Rav Huna hold of Gzeira? If I am in one location and I want my object to go beyond me, I am taking my object from me to outside of where I am. Here, it can make sense that if I would be allowed to do so, I might end up walking it myself. The movement that the Braisa does allow for me to do is if I am moving the object from a place that's outside my tchum to me, I'm bringing it into me. I'm bringing it into me. So even though I cannot go with my feet over there, can't walk there, but if I get an instrument and with it I drag it into my location, I didn't walk beyond my tchum. I did not walk beyond my tchum. I'm not carrying. That object made an akira inside an enclosed city, and it made a hanacha. So no violation of it happened. And the fact that I'm bringing it in my direction makes sense here. There's no gzeira that Shema Yimshach Acher Chefzav, because he's not going from him away. He's going in the direction from away towards him. Says Rav Huna, same concept of the Braisa. The Braisa spoke about a city. Rav Huna is expanding it to a chatzir. If I begin Shabbos outside a location, my Tchum Shabbos ends up in middle of your chatzir. So says Rav Huna, ein loy elo chatzi chatzir. okay, I only have to walk half a chutzir. Now, can I carry in any part of the chutzir? No, that's something that we already learned in Amud Aleph. Because if I can only myself, right, if I can only myself carry to the half a chutzir, I don't allow for me to throw something to the other hand, because Shema Yimashach Cheptzav, once you have that, then there's another din. If I cannot carry in one half of the chutzir, and since it's now nifritza b'maloya l'makayma asur, I can't even carry in any part of the chutzir. But as far as Tchum is concerned, I get to walk the half a chutzir. Says the Gemara Pshita that you can't go beyond the half a chutzir. Pshita. We just learned that in the Brisa. The same thing is with the ear. No, Ema. What Rafuna means to emphasize is that in my half a chutzir I get to walk. Thinking about it, that's also Pshita. Why would you think otherwise? Mal the Tema here, there's a chiddush. The Brisa spoke about the city. When you go to a city, you don't have objects all over the place. People don't carry in cities. Normally, it's a carnalist, it's a Rosh Hashanah. A chutzir is a location where everyone is carrying everything everywhere. Maybe he would say, Leichish Dilma Asad Utaltula Bekulam. And therefore what? And therefore he would not even permit you to walk anywhere in the chutzir. Because if you'll walk, you'll end up carrying like everyone else in the chutzir that's walking and carrying. That's where you don't have in a bika. That's where you don't have in the case in top of the amid in the ear. Kamash Malan, that's no different. We're not more machmir. Omar Rav Nachman. So they have their machloikas. Moida lihuna, that was his colleague, so he didn't use the word Rav. Hoya moida dubav, a person is measuring. The kol samidase al sfas tikra, and the tchum Shabbos is exactly at the edge of a roof of a house whose entire wall in that side is missing, which means that if you were to take one step beyond your tchum, you would be within the Reshus HaYachid of this opened house from one side. So even though Rav Huna normally holds that since you can't throw it in there, nifratze b'maloyai, you can't even carry something within your tchum, here it'll be maida that mutter letalta b'chalabayis. Wow. You can not only carry within your tchum, you can throw it in there. Again, by throwing. You can't walk in there because it's beyond your tchum. I shema yimashach achri cheptzav. Here we're not afraid of that. My tamo. Hoyel v'tikras abayis choy vetes. When we say shema yimashach achri cheptzav, if you are out there in an open field, there's nothing reminding you that your tchum finished. But the moment that the roof is there, I know the wall is open, but the roof is exactly on top of where your tchum boundary ends. So it's a constant reminder that atkan is your tchum and not beyond it. And don't confuse again tchum Shabbos and carrying. So as long as I'll remember that I cannot go beyond, I cannot walk beyond it, there is no fear that I accidentally will be running after the object that I'm throwing. Throwing, you can throw. Why would you not be allowed to throw? If your tchum is in a Reshus HaYachid and you're throwing it weited in a Reshus HaYachid, as far as Chaytzah is concerned, again, theoretically, there are two different dinim. So here he's minded that you can throw it in there. That this is really a machlokes tanoi, l'chayra. L'chayra, the machlokes Rav Nachman and Rav Huna is linked to the machlokes we have in our Mishnah. Now that's a stretch. How is it connected to our Mishnah? We never spoke about throwing. So let's go back to the Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that if goyim, against my will, b'shoigig, if they removed me from my tchum, but they didn't place me out there in the open, l'kula alma, I only have daladamas. Even though I left b'shoigig, doesn't matter. I'm outside my tchum. The Mishnah is speaking about walking, not about carrying. But if they place me in another city, or they place me in a dir or an asad in any enclosed area, and like we mentioned, had I taken in Shabbos in this enclosed area, that entire enclosed area would be tantamount to daladamas. Do we say now that for that person, okay, he has daladamas, but the city is daladamas or not? That was the machlokes. So Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, they are on one side of the argument. They hold mahalach eskula. Yes, we also apply over here. The whole city is daladamas. Now that's very similar to the case we had above, right? In the case they have above, clearly we don't say that. Here they are saying, as far as taken out b'shoigeg, mahalach eskula, the whole city is daladamas, and Abishon Abakiva, no, even though he's in a city, people who took in Shabbos in that city, their whole city is like daladamas, but not for him. He physically can only keep within the 4 amos. And my love, now listen to the link, that Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi ben Azariah, that they say, Mahalach es kula, the Mahalach es kula, v'loi gazri hiluch dir v'soyer otu hiluch babika lochari, you can make a gzeira. What will be the gzeira? If hoitziyu nachrim in a midbar, in a bika, he only has the aladamas. Here they're putting you in a city. They're not afraid that if they're going to say that you can walk the whole city, that when they're going to put you in a bika, you're going to think you have a new tchum from your new location. After all, you were taken against your will, and you would not be allowed to do so. But there is no fear. They don't make such a gezeidah. So therefore, now that's the link. So maybe, now not the maybe, now we're saying that tiltul, asur hilech, also like gazri. And what was Rav Huna's problem with Rav Nachman? That if you will be allowed to throw beyond your tchum, you might walk there. They don't make these gezeidas. People know every case is a case, every din is a din. Now I know that it's hiluch ata hiluch and tiltur ata hiluch is not the same. We know that. But the havamina is that we are comparing them one to the other, and therefore Rav Nachman, who's lenient as far as throwing an object is concerned, will be following the sheet of Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi ben Azariah. And what's the other opinion in the Mishnah? Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Akiva, they say, no, ein lo ela arba amas. And why would they say that? That's the havamina. Because the gazri hiluch dir v'sahar, otru hiluch the bika, and bika, no one says you can go more than dalad amas. So they made such a gezeidah. And now again, the same type of link, umi the hiluch ata hiluch gazri, so l'chayra, tiltul ata hiluch nami gazri, and that will be the source for Rav Huna. So not only can Rav Nachman not tell Rav Huna that don't argue with Shmuel, because there's a Tana against you. Not only did we not refute Rav Huna, now Rav Huna is just siding with the Tanoim, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara, no, that these two machlokes in both ways are not linked one to the other. Mimai Dilma ki loy gazri Rabban Gamliel Rabbi ben Azariah hiluch sa'ar midir ata hiluch bika and a chanami. Why do they not have that fear? It's not because of the words of tiltul and hiluch. No, even hiluch. Why would people confuse that? It's two different types of locations. If someone takes me out of my tchum against my will and they place me out there in a bika, there are no walls there, nothing can be carried there. Of course, I only have daladamas. If someone places me in the city, it's a whole different scenario. I'm in an enclosed area. Hani mili awesome the shnei mekayim. So they're not goyzer hiluch ata hiluch. But when it comes to this fear that Rav Huna has, that if my tchu Shabbos will only allow me to go until one point, if I will be allowed to be metaltal through Zerika to a farther point, I might end up going there. That avol tiltul ata hiluch l'mekayim echad the makim echad hu. That even the first two Tanaim in the Mishnah, maybe the Gazi Gezeidah Shamim Mashar Chefs. Rav Huna can go even according to the first two Tanaim. And the same thing is in the reverse. The Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva Nami Mimai Mishum the Gazi Hu. Their Chuman has nothing to do with Gezeidah Hiluch Ata Hiluch. Vilma Mishum the Kosavri. Pashat that Ki Omrin and Kol Habayis Kulai Ka'arba Amos Nami. And Kol Habayis Kulai doesn't only mean Habayis. If you are Shoivis, Koine Shvisa in Los Angeles, to whole Los Angeles is Daladamas. That's only for people that take in Shabbos in that location. But then there's no such a din. And that's why they hold you not allowed to walk there. And therefore, the machlokes of our Mishnah is not linked, but the machlokes of Rav Nachman and Rav Huna, yes, still stands. Okay. Now, Omar Rav. Now we have time. Let's go back to the Mishnah. The beauty of the Mishnah is that, like we mentioned, when the Mishnah says a story, the story is normally to authenticate one of the sides of a machlokes. Or even if Rabbi gives a stam halacha, a story is the way Rabbi says azoi the halacha. In the Mishnah, after we bring the machlokes, what's the machlokes? Someone against your will took you out of your tchum and put you in a enclosed area. Just to make it simple, the first Tana, I know it's two Tanaim. We're going to quote the Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua because that's the names that the Gemara is quoting here. But it's Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi ben Azariah. It's Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Gamliel holds that since you are now in an enclosed area, and you were taken there b'shoigeg against your will, you get to walk within that entire enclosed area. You can't walk outside of it, but that's like daladamas. Rabbi Yeshua says, no, you are still bound to your daladamas. Then the Mishnah gave a story. It sounds like the case of the story is the same case. What was the story? These 4 Tanaim were in a ship. The ship did not leave the port when Shabbos came in. So they were kind of shvisa, we're at the port. Kibbenei ha'ir. The ship went into sea. The ship now, relatively quick, went beyond 2,000 amas. Now they are outside their tchum. What happens now? So l'cha'oira, this should be the same achloikis. Rabban Gamliel l'shitase will allow a person to walk within this enclosed ship. Rabbi Yeshua would say, you got to stick to your 4 amas. Now, de facto, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva did stick to their 4 amas, but the Mishnah says they did it as a chumrah. But why is that a chumrah, we ask? That should be me'ikar adin. So the Gemara indirectly now will give, we're going to start today with 2 reasons why these 2 cases are dissimilar. Why even in the case of the ship, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva will hold you can walk in the whole ship. They were machmir. But why? So let's begin. But the angle, the way we're getting to that is that when we are paskening, like the cases in the Mishnah, we always separate the 2 cases. The case where you were placed out in a city versus the case of the ship. It's considered 2 different cases. Amar Rav, the halacha is like Rabban Gamliel, both in the case of Dir and Soyar, that you can walk in the whole Dir and Soyar, and in the case of the ship, that you can walk in the whole ship. Shmuel says, Hilchas like Gamliel b'sfina, we only paskan on is that you can walk in the whole ship, but in the Dir and the Soyar, we paskan like Rabbi Yeshua. So what do we see over here? The Kula Alma Miyas, the halacha is like Rabban Gamliel in the case of the ship. Like we mentioned, actually, there's no real machloikas in the case of the ship. Even Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva, me'ikir adin, hold you can walk in the ship. The question is why? If we say that since you were taken out from your tchum b'shoigeg and you were placed in an enclosed area, if we're going to go like Rabbi Yeshua, I don't care that you are in a city. You only have daladamas. Why would a ship be different? You should only be allowed to walk in daladamas in the ship. So we have 2 answers. Amar Rabba, it's gewaldig. My friends, think about this. When I took in Shabbos in LA, and God forbid, goyim against my will, they put me out and they put me in another city, and Rabbi Akiva says, Rabbi Yeshua says, I only have daladamas. Yeah, because they put me in another location. I was not there when Shabbos, I'm in another city, and people who are shoyvis in that city can walk the whole city, and it's not even included in their 2,000 amas, but I was not. I was not shoyvis in that location. What was the case of the ship? I took in Shabbos in the ship. I was within the mechitzas of the ship. The whole ship is what moved. Doesn't matter. I know that the ship moved beyond my tchum, but I took in Shabbos in this ship. That's why I get to walk the whole ship. I do say the whole ship is my daladamas. That's his logic. Rab Zera gives another logic. Rab Zera Amar, Hoyel Usfina, Noitaltoi Mitchilas Arba, Umanachte Besoiv Arba. Okay, he says, let's go with Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva. If I'm taken against my will, which is I'm in a ship, the ship is going, I'm taken out of my original tchum. I only have 4 amas. But let me explain to you something. Where am I right now? I'm on the water. The ship is moving. Where exactly is my 4 amas? What are you telling me? I can only walk within 4 amas? The ship is constantly moving. Every moment, because of the movement of my ship, I'm already outside my 4 amas. What happens if I'm removed again outside my 4 amas? I have another 4 amas. But that doesn't last for a moment because the ship is again moving. No, I can only be bound to 4 amas if I am on a stationary place. I'm here, I only have 4 amas. If I'm in the ship and the ship is moving, so since there is no 4 amas, or I'm constantly going to a new location, so you can't say I'm bound to 4 amas. So therefore I can walk in the whole ship. Says the Gemara, what's the difference? My benai between these 2 logics. So the Gemara is going to give 2 gavaldik and nafkaminas. 3 lines from the bottom. One nafkamina is ikebenayu. that during Shabbos the walls of the ship became lower than 10 tefachim. What was Rabbi's logic? Rabbi's logic is that since I took in Shabbos in this enclosed area, so at least I get to keep this enclosed area. That is for me my daladamas. But what happens if it lost its enclosure? The walls went down. Then according to Rabbi, you cannot be allowed to walk more than 4 amas. Lishitas Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva. According to Rabbi Zajac, it makes no difference. You're moving. Or inami, another nafkamina, b'koifetz misfina l'sfina. If you, during Shabbos, their ships going on the water, and as they're moving, you go from one to the other. According to Rabbi Zajac, who says that if you are constantly in motion, you can be bound to 4 amas because those 4 amas keep on changing. It doesn't matter that I began Shabbos on one ship and now I'm on a second ship. According to Rabbi, the reason why even Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Akiva will hold you get to walk the whole ship is because you took in Shabbos within the walls of the ship. I'm in another ship. So according to Rabbi, in this scenario, with Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Akiva, you only have 4 amas. You don't get to walk the whole ship. Now, let's just close this up. Why doesn't Rabbi Zajac say like Rabbi? Because each one is talking gavaldik. Amalach, Rabbi Zajac will say, Mechitzois, dat mem gimel, lahavriach mayim asuis. The walls in a ship are not enclosing the ship for its interior. It's only there to keep the water out. And therefore, it's not halachically considered chashav mechitzas. And therefore, we can't apply, if I am shoivis in a enclosed area, the entire interior is like 4 amas. That you cannot say when it comes to a ship, which is why Rabbi Zajac doesn't use the logic of Rabbi to explain the shita of Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Akiva, that they are moidem ikar adin, which is why we paskin like Rav Gamliel, that you get to walk the whole ship. And likewise, in reverse, the reason why Rabbi doesn't subscribe to the logic of Rabbi Zajac, you know why? Because Rabbi holds, if the ship is moving, of course, there are no restrictions. How could there be restrictions? But you're bound to your daladamas. Where exactly are those daladamas? It keeps on changing. Rabbi holds that the shita of if you are in a ship, you get to walk the whole ship is even when the ship in middle of the ocean or middle of wherever it's going stopped, you anchored it. According to the logic of Rabbi Zajac, when you anchor a ship, then taka now you only have daladamas. But Rabbi doesn't believe in that. Rabbi holds that even if the ship is not moving, you get to walk in the whole ship. Why? Because you took in Shabbos within the mechitzas of the ship. And since he doesn't want to, he will hold that even b'sha'amda, you are allowed to walk the whole ship. Is a raya that Rabbi Zaida's logic is not the reason. What is the reason? Because you took in Shabbos in that Markaim, Devaldik. To be continued. Guys, we're good? This was a great daf. Slichas at 6:35. Danny, have a question?
Rabbi.
Yes.
Yeah, what we just said at the end there.
Yes.
This nafkamina, we said that according to Rabbi, he agrees that when the ship is moving the whole time, everybody would agree you could carry throughout the whole ship, right?
In other words,
this Dalet Amas restriction, it's only if the ship anchors out at sea after already traveling outside the Tchum, the 2,000 Amas, right? So now, are you limited to the Dalet Amas in the ship or not?
Rabbi holds that here also everyone will agree that you're not bound to the Dalet Amas, but what will be the reason? You can't say because the Dalet Amas is changing, it's not changing. Must be, the reason is because you took on Shabbos within the walls of the ship. Because your makim is moving. Beautiful.
Okay.